Looks like we're live. What's up, Blur Gang? It is Brian. I'm back. I haven't done one of these in a while. Most of my live streams have been about business and marketing stuff, and so I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and talk about nerd stuff. You know, the kind of stuff that actually gets me out of bed in the morning. No. Here's the reality. I've been back and forth with a lot of stuff regarding long boxing while black, and exactly what I want to do with it is it's challenging to try to build one YouTube channel. And so now I'm trying to build two at the same time. So we're going to see where this thing goes. Here's what's happening. So I'm going to be doing live streams when I can on Friday afternoons. Normally it would be at my studio, but I've had to make some adjustments for some stuff that's going on. And so I'm kind of shooting out of my storage space / basement. That's why I got this background here. This background exists because back here is a disaster. And a lot of it is stuff that I have from my mom's house that, you know, we're still kind of processing and going through. And we have to have a cleaning here to get this stuff out of here. But it's a lot of stuff. And so the basement, our office space has kind of become more or less a storage space for a lot of stuff from my mom's house when we closed it down and sold it. And so that's what's going on there. And so right now, normally I like shooting in my office. I'm going to be changing office spaces here pretty shortly. Start migrating some stuff as we start getting towards the end of the year. Depending on what happens with this building that we're in right now. And so that's kind of what we have going on. Anyway, long story short, I have the background up. Y'all just gonna have to deal with it for right now until I can kind of reclaim my office space. All right. On today's live stream, there's a couple of things I want to get into, and I'm excited because I haven't done this in a while, and I'm kind of playing around with a couple of different formats regarding different things that I want to do with the channel. I'm testing out some stuff, but you know, first things first. My name is Brian. I'm a black nerd. It's probably pretty obvious. Got even my Power Man and Iron Fist shirt on. This is actually Power Man and Iron Fist was actually was a comic book that my mom, one of the first comic books my mom bought me, and really started my journey into the comic book nerd thing. And so, anyway, that's kind of my nerd cred. I'm interested in sci-fi movies, comic books, wrestling, tech, even science fiction books to a degree. But you know, I kind of touch on all areas of pop culture, and so that's kind of what we got going here. Today's episode is just going to be some things that I've experienced today that I wanted to discuss. A couple of conversations I had on Twitter, and then I'm going to jump into the real meat of this, which is the nerdy stuff about the Transformer comic book universe. So if that's what you're here for, I'll get to it momentarily. First things first, the new Drake album dropped today. And those that know me personally know I have some feelings about Drake albums, but I want to be really transparent with y'all. When a new I was a college radio DJ, and so when a new album comes out, the first thing I do is I sit down, I listen to it, I try to give it to kind of see what everybody's vibing about, see what everybody's buzzing about, and I do it with Drake albums. It's kind of almost a hate thing now, or it's almost like a punishment for myself. You know, it's like some kind of attrition or something. Maybe there's something in my past life that I did wrong, and I feel like I have to punish myself. But anyway, I try to give Drake's albums a chance every single time he drops one. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, bro's been serving up mid for the better part of a decade, and I'm tired of his fans lying to me about it. Y'all lying to me about it, bro. That new album, it ain't it. And it's not even that it's just Drake. It's just not it on a massive level. Like there's a lot of misses on there. And so for me to be fair to it, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it's not for me. And that's about as equitable as I can be with the Drake album. And I know his fans are rabid and stuff like that, but a lot of his fans are also 8th grade white girls, and so I ain't sweating. I'm not sweating that at all. I don't care. The album ain't for me, and people have been hyping it up like it's the best album of the year and whoop-de-woo and this, that, and the third. It's not. It's not even close to the Killer Mike album. And Ransom dropped an EP that was dope, and Joel Ortiz dropped an album that was dope with, I forgot what the producer's name was, but lots of people have been dropping dope material this year, and Drake's not even close to any of that I've heard. It's not even the top 5 or 10 albums. I don't even have it above Slim Thug's new album that just dropped. Like I'm not feeling it at all, but I'm not the target audience. I'm going to tell you straight up. It's been average. The career's been, his output is amazing. He's been putting a lot of stuff out. He has a lot of fans. I don't care about that shit. The reality is, for me, it's been average at best. And so I'm not really feeling it that much. And that puts it kind of, I'm not in the pop group. I'm not in the dominant group when it comes to that stuff, because a lot of his fans really enjoy his stuff. I think that this one isn't it. And typically, I'll say his albums are super average, but it's somewhere below average. Like it's below average of his normal output. It was a chore to get through, and I listened to it this morning. I tried to listen to it at the gym, and I almost fell asleep in between sets of deadlifts. So that's just kind of what it was. Not a good record. So also this morning, I happened to be online, and there was this Twitter thread, and dude asked, what was the comic book that your least favorite comic book? And I had to be honest, because I've read a lot of comic books that maybe they weren't for me. Maybe I just didn't enjoy them. It is what it is. But when I look at like my least favorite comic books of all time, there's a couple that really stand out. One was The Boys. I know that the show is having this resurge and all these new fans and everything, and they love it, bro. Like they love the shell out of The Boys. That's cool. I'm fine with that if you really enjoy the show. Here's what my issue with it is. The show is a lot tamer than the comic book could have. The show is way tamer than the comic book. And the comic book it was ugly. It was mean-spirited. A lot of racism. A lot of sexual assault. That was just, it didn't seem necessary. And it took, I know Garth Ennis doesn't like superheroes, and I'm cool with that. If he doesn't like superheroes, that's fine. And he wanted to write a satire book about superheroes, which I'm cool with too. I'm cool with that as well. The thing that I wasn't quite into was, I wasn't into, like, some of the jokes were, some of the jokes weren't played straight. I guess I get that. I understand the concept of satire, and so I'm not trying to shit on that idea as a concept, but it wasn't satire. It was like satire being delivered at the end of a baseball bat, where it was just kind of too much and over the top. And the comic book it got to the point where I was reading The Boys. Again, it's another act of contrition, kind of like listening to Drake's albums whenever he drops them. It was an unpleasant experience. And I'm not saying that lightly. It was a deeply unpleasant experience reading The Boys comic books, issue to issue. And it kept getting progressively worse. I think the peak for me where I just checked out and said, I'm kind of done with this, was the entire arc with Mother's Milk. And why he got the name Mother's Milk which was pretty kind of gross. But then the fact that, his daughter had compound V, and she looked like an adult, but she was still a child. And the mom and the daughter doing X-rated films together. No, I'm cool with that. And that's where Garth Ennis kind of lost me in that series, because of the fact that it got to the point where it was kind of an endurance match to make it through those books. And it wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying myself. I wasn't really enjoying the material. I was just like, I need to finish this book. I need to see it through to the end, since I'm so invested in the series. I'm so deep in it. But the Boys comics were just too ugh. And I mess with Garth Ennis. Like, the Punisher Max series was dope. I get that. And I understand his brutal realism on it. But I also understand the man hates superheroes. And so whenever he's forced to deal with superheroes on any level, it turns into like this really dreary, dark affair. I think he did The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, which was just ridiculous. And his send up of superheroes is just gross. Anyway, I understand satire, but The Boys wasn't it. It was like it was taking a very interesting premise about superheroes gone rogue, superheroes that have gone bad and um, weren't good people. And it was an interesting premise. Of course, I know the narrative or the premise about the evil Superman is kind of played, but it is what it is. It took an interesting premise and turned it up to 11, and it was just ugly. And so that's one of my least favorite series of all time was The Boys. And I got through it just because I'm like, I got to see this through to the end. And making it through the end, it didn't feel like any kind of satisfying experience at all. That's one. Two, pretty much anything Mark Millar does. I know that dude is kind of, for a second was the comic book movie du jour kind of guy with Kick Ass, um, and a couple of other series. I think was it the one where the British one? Anyway, um, but I've always found Mark Millar to be really not palatable. The Unfunnies is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life. And you talk about a lot of comic book series, and I normally don't have the nerd rage about comic book series. I understand that writers change and characters adapt and things like that, and everything always merges back to the status quo. The Unfunnies was actually physically made me upset. Um, and I know that it was his intention, but it wasn't the same thing. I'm watching a wannabe edge lord operating. And so Mark Millar, pretty much anything does. Kick Ass 2 was exceptionally gross. I wasn't into the comic book Kick Ass 2 at all. Again, the movie was, if you've seen the movie and you've seen how wild the movie is, the movie of Kick Ass 2 is tame compared to the comic books. It might as well be a PG-13 movie compared to the comic books. It might as well be rated G compared to the comic books. There are scenes in that comic that are so disturbing that the actors would not do them. They would not do them. It was that level of gross. Um, the main villain specifically, and if you've read the comic, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was one scene where he's like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that." Kick-Ass 2 was just it was disturbing on another level. And I think it's going back to the trendy thing of white, like middle class, and it was middle class uh Scottish or British dudes, Scottish and or Scottish slash British dudes, um, trying to be edgy and talking about street crime and things along those lines. And it's from an outsider's perspective. And so they try to play it fast and loose with street crime, and it's just turned up to 11, and it's just bad. Because he also did, I think it was Wanted, the comic book version, the one that they adapted with Angelina Jolie and old boy who played Professor X. I'm terrible with names, by the way. Was it James McAvoy? Um, and Wanted was not even the same thing as the comic book. And the comic book played around with pedophilia, and it tried to play it for jokes, um, and shit humor and all kinds of other stuff. And it really didn't land. And it just felt like Miller was like, I'm gonna see how edgy I can be. But the top of Miller's work, the thing that stands out to me as the defining crescendo, it was early in his career, as before he started working with major comic book companies, was the Unfunnies. The Unfunnies, and I mentioned it, it was literally, and I'm not just saying this lightly, because I've seen a lot of horrible shit. And I used to be a social worker, so I used to see a lot of horrible shit on a day-to-day basis. Um, The Unfunnies was literally one of the ugliest pieces of media I've ever seen in my life. And I know the name, the Unfunnies, haha, it's not supposed to be funny. We're gonna take these little, it looks like, you know, anthropomorphic, whatever the word is, animals that look like human beings and converse like human beings, and we're going to put them in some of the most messed up, disgusting situations ever. Um, you know, we're talking about, you know, playing around with kids getting molested and people getting assaulted in jail and all kinds of just pure awfulness, to the point where I think Millar's wife actually was filing for was the book almost made her file for divorce, or actually made her file for divorce. It was one of the two. um it was that bad, and because she looked at him like, who the hell did I marry? It was it was pretty dark, and it's Millar at his absolute worst. And so seeing that early on in his career and figuring and seeing him kick ass and, you know, kick ass and stuff he did with Ramita, and then moving on to a couple of his other books. I know there was one where it's basically a pastiche of Batman, where it's a evil Batman, and he did some horrible stuff. His entire library of work, I have yet to really read anything of his that I've actually liked. Even with the Ultimates, like when we cross over into the Marvel universe where they let him in the Ultimates, his version of what's realistic is just goofy, cartoonish violence, or what, um, or basically what a suburban dude who's never been around any kind of street violence or anything would think is street violence. That's the way I can put it. Another wannabe edgelord, and so when it comes to Mark Millar, I'm off a dude too, man. And any of his work, I'm kind of off of it. The Kingsmen or whatever. That's cool. I can deal with that, but some of his other stuff was just gross, and so those are the ones that instantly kind of pop up in my mind when I think of the most unappealing or grossest comic books, or not even grossest, but um, comic books I just don't like. And I try to give everybody a chance, but I just genuinely did not like it. So the boys comic books and anything Mark Millar touches on his own, where he's not moored in or has a company telling him he can or can't do something. So if you have some comic book series that you don't like, go ahead and drop them in the comments to this live stream. Uh, I'm interested to see what I'm interested to see kind of in here what you don't like, and see if it matches up with mine. Again, my takes aren't universal, and I don't expect it to be for everybody, and that's all right. I'm cool with that. But yeah, those are the most unpleasant comic books. What was the other part? There was one more that's kind of playing around in my mind. I think it was DC. Identity Crisis was a pretty ugly book, um, just for a different reason. The Ultimate Universe, I've kind of mentioned that. It jumped the shark. You know, we're gonna make Captain America, but we're gonna make him racist. Eh. Um, I typically don't go for. I typically don't really do evil Superman. Um, I just it doesn't really appeal to me. I think it's kind of played out, and I haven't seen anybody do anything terribly interesting with it. And so, anyway, that's the slander portion. That's the slander portion of the live stream. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna kind of pivot and focus on some stuff that's a little bit more fun. I guess it's not just me bitching and moaning about um, bitching and moaning about Mark Millar and Garth Ennis's worst instincts. So today, the chunk of it is I want to talk about the IDW Transformers universe, and I'm doing this because I want this to be piece of a bigger thing that I work on moving forward. Where, and I'm pulling up my notes here, so you got to forgive me. Um, I want to talk about the IDW Transformers universe, basically the run that kind of started in 2005, but really was really hitting its stride around 2012, where it was Transformers, More Than Meets the Eye, and Transformers Robots in Disguise. Those books. And so there's a lot of super great world building, and it's all based on a lot of the ideas and concepts that we saw in the OG Transformer series from Marvel, because it included some of the same writers with Furman and things like that, where they had their fingertips on it with the original writers of the Transformer mythos. And so I wanted to talk about a couple of elements, but before we do, and before I get into major story arcs, I need to do a little bit of world building, because before I sit there and tell you how awesome Overlord is in the IDW Transformers universe, I got to give you a little bit of backstory, and that's going to be a video that comes up. But TLDR, too long didn't read. Here's the thing: Overlord is essentially if you took Freddy Krueger, gave him Wolverine's healing factor and indestructible adamantium skeleton. But yeah, Freddy Krueger's temperament, like his joy in killing, mixed with like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, and you made him a transformer, and you mixed it with Megatron, and you made him a transformer. Basically, Overlord is he's not he's not evil in the haha, I'm going to take over the world sense. He's evil in the Overlord's a character that's evil in the I think killing is fun kind of. That's his temperament. Like, he enjoys hurting other living beings, whether they be Transformers, humans, anything. He is a sadist. And so it's like, what if Megatron was a slasher villain? And so I want to review Last Stand of the Records, because Last Stand of the Records is basically a Transformer story. It's a mini series that is basically a survival horror, because Overlord is the monster that they're trying to survive. And so I got to give you a little bit of background about Overlord, but I also have to give you a little bit of background about how he became how he is. But then I also had to give you a little bit of background about him being a phase sixer, and then phase sixer leads into 0.1%er, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So in the Transformer universe, there are robots that are called outliers, where they have special powers that aren't related to any alt mode. I think Starscream is considered an outlier because he doesn't need a physical form to exist. As y'all remember from the old cartoon series with Starscream's ghost, after he got vaporized by Galvatron in the movie, he was still existing. And the comics wrote it that that's his power. He doesn't really need a physical form. Trailbreaker has shields. Hound can turn invisible. And these things are not related to, they're like their own secret powers, almost like mutants. Like, these are mutant Transformers. Okay. So follow my logic here. There's the outliers, and then there's the 0.1%ers. 0.1%ers are basically the superhumans of the Transformer universe. They're stronger, they're more durable. Some of them have more powers. They can harness more powers and abilities, and others have the ability to be, you can add on to them. They're load bearers, where they can carry an extra load. And that's one of them really is really interesting with Ultra Magnus. Ultra Magnus is basically, it's an identity, but there are robots that carry the name of Ultra Magnus, where they put on the Ultra Magnus armor and become Ultra Magnus. And only specific Transformers can do that. And so the 0.1%ers are the most powerful of the Transformers in the Transformer universe. And they call them 0.1%ers because they represent 0.1% of the Transformers that are alive. And so they're considered the strongest ones. And, you know, you're going to have your usual suspects, like Megatron is a 0.1%er. Of course, Optimus Prime is a 0.1%er. Grimlock's a 0.1%er. But then there's going to be other ones that you don't hear about, like Six Shot. Six Shot is not, I think he's an outlier and a 0.1%er. And he is one of Megatron's elite guard. And so that also means he's a phase sixer. And so there's a lot of different layers. So I'm gonna go into 0.1 percenters. I'm gonna get into a little bit of phase sixers, and just kind of bear with me. And if you're not into deep nerd shit, then you might as well click off now, because that's what we're about to jump headlong into. I'm sorry, y'all. Anyway, so in the Transformer universe, there's in the Transformer universe here. Let me pull this up here. The way that Transformers are born, they can either be cold casted or born of a spark. Cold casted is born of a spark, or they can be assembled. The ones that come from a spark are typically a little bit more powerful. And in the Transformer series, they actually have a higher place in the hierarchy depending on who's in charge of the society, because Autobots and Decepticons are all from the same race. They're just different factions. And the Decepticons were actually led into rebellion by Megatron. The Decepticons typically were the working class, or actually kind of the slave class. Megatron started out in the IDW universe as a gladiator, but he is also a poet. So he's an artist who was forced into a gladiatorial lifestyle. And because he was a 0.1 percenter, he was very good at gladiatorial combat. And that's where he learned how to fight. But he led a rebellion, and the rebellion, the Decepticons ended up taking the name. Well, they took the name of Decepticons, and they were overthrowing the society. And him and Optimus Prime worked together to overthrow the regime that Cybertron was under. All right. So IDW series was dope. It was a continuation of the Marvel one. Okay. So the definition of a 0.1 percenter is Cybertronians with exceptionally large amounts of energon within their sparks. And it's a really rare occurrence. They're kind of the elite. They have an elite status among Cybertronians. Their abilities are they have enhanced strength and resilience, and sometimes they have the outlier special abilities. They're long-lived. They live longer than pretty much every other Transformer. And in the IDW Transformer universe, they will kill a Transformer graphically. And the war has been going on for 5 million years. And Megatron and Optimus Prime are at least over 5 million years old. They're well over 5 million years old. So they've been around a long time. And they can recover from damage that could destroy others. There were plenty of times where they had the death of Optimus Prime, which was kind of a metaphorical death. He ended up dropping the moniker of Optimus Prime and just went back to his original name of Orin Pax. But they can survive a pretty hellacious amount of damage. So, notable 0.1 percenters: Optimus Prime. Strength, leadership, resilience. He is the premier Autobot. He was a black icon growing up. Like, I joke around, but growing up, man, in the Reagan era, man, we didn't have a whole lot for black role models on TV, man. There's Mr. T and Optimus Prime, bro. And so that's what we rolled with. But he is the alpha of the Autobots. Megatron's a 0.1 percenter. 1 percenter. He has incredible strength and endurance. He also has the ability, and I don't know if this is formal or not, but they've done it enough in the comic books where I'm making it a formal identity, so bite me. He has the ability to channel tremendous amounts of energy and use them to his own ends. And so there's been instances where he channeled a black hole and eradicated a bunch of Decepticon super weapons that he created that were coming to kill him, which I'm gonna get into in a little bit. And that was, he has the power to channel that kind of stuff. And he eliminated an entire universe with a blast of channeled energy. So Megatron is a pretty heavy hitter. Grimlock, a couple of other ones, and I'm gonna pull up a list of 0.1 percenters so I can give you all of the ones that are known and documented in the IDW universe. But Megatron, Grimlock, Optimus Prime, There's a couple of others, and there's going to be a lot that you haven't heard of because they're kind of exclusive to the comic books. They weren't they weren't even really in the American series. You might see them in the Japanese continuation, but there's the known 0.1 percenters according to the wiki is Animus, Black Shadow, who also is a phase sixer, Blockus, Convoy, Datum, de minimis, ambus. These are all iterations. These are all people who carried the Ultra Magnus armor. Fortress Maximus. He's on Fortress Maximus in the comic book, in the IDW comic book, is not a fortress. He is the same size. He's a little bit bigger than Optimus Prime, and he's just as strong. Grimlock I already mentioned. Higher Tech, Megatron, another Ultra Magnus armor wearer is Minimus Ambus, of course, Optimus Prime, Overlord, and Ramp. And there's a lot of other ones which they've hinted at. 0.1 percenter is almost kind of like Omega level mutant in Marvel Comics. The Omega level mutants, it's never really clear to find exactly who, like there's no exhaustive list of Omega mutants. It really is who is the one writing the book and what do they need and who their favorite characters are. And they will elevate X-Men and mutants to Omega level mutants. This is kind of a little bit of what happened with the 0.1 percenter. So I'm kind of going through a couple of other names. You got Six Shot, Tarn, Suture, of course, Ultra Magnus. I'm trying to see who else we got here. Megatron, Overlord, Rampage, Scorponok. These are all 0.1 percenters. Bigger, stronger, more durable. So these are like your Superman and Black Adams of the Transformer universe, and they're the heaviest hitters. And so in the comic book, you know, Devastator was supposed to be the big bad, but Optimus Prime, he could go hand to hand with like your Devastators and some of your larger Transformers because he's just that damn strong. Same thing with Megatron. That's how Megatron became the leader of the Decepticons. He's just that damn strong. And that was the concept of the 0.1 percenters. So understand there are different classes of Autobots and Decepticons. Okay, we got that? Good. We're going to move on to the next part. With 0.1 percenters, there's also the phase sixers, and the phase sixers in the IDW universe, when we're talking about phase sixers, these are basically Megatron's elite guard. And the reason why they're called phase sixers is because in the Transformer universe, Megatron has a 6-phase protocol to take over a planet, to conquer a world. And so these are the robots, these are the Decepticons that he sends in to basically crush the last of the resistance and finally sterilize and take over a planet. They're insanely powerful. They are all 0.1 percenters. And there's another group of them that have even been given another task, which I'll get into lightly. I won't go into in depth with it, but I'll lightly discuss it. And so your phase sixers are the most powerful Decepticons outside of Megatron himself. And so they are the elite guard. And that's the danger of it, because since they're Decepticons, they're prone to go off the rails and they're prone to kind of go along and do their own thing. And so Megatron lost control of the phase sixers. You know, there's a couple of them that stayed loyal, but more or less they kind of rebelled all in their own ways. The most notable was the one I mentioned earlier, Overlord. Overlord is a phase sixer, and he is also unique in the Transformer universe, is that he can transform. When he transforms into 2 different components, a tank component and a plane component. And he's a lot bigger than most of the other Transformers. There's one where he pops up on a ship and literally stomps an Autobot to death, like steps on him like a bug. So he's pretty huge. But also he is ruthless. And so he didn't want to be just Megatron's weapon. Overlord wanted to kill everybody. He liked the sport of it, and his ultimate prey would have been Megatron, and so he actually wanted to end Megatron. He was born sadistic, and it just kind of stuck with him. But Overlord is probably one of the most notable Phase Sixers outside of the Decepticon Justice Division, which I'll get into very briefly here. So I've gone through the hierarchy. To become a Phase Sixer, you have to go through basically. I don't know for you comic book nerds, with Captain America, where Captain America had to undergo the Super Soldier Serum. Well, that's what it is. This is their version of the Weapon X / Super Soldier protocol, where their bodies are transformed into being living weapons for Megatron's use. And that's what it was. So they got to undergo extensive and painful modifications just to become a Phase Sixer. It's pretty wild. And so that's kind of where it is. They have to undergo, and it's enough to drive them insane. I know when Overlord went through his, when they were making his skeleton indestructible, as soon as he was done, he lashed out and he crushed the head of the Megatron's chief scientist who was working on him. So there wouldn't be any more Phase Sixers after him. He was the last one. So, but they're created to be bigger, stronger, faster, more resilient. They can take a lot more damage, and they're the last answer. Like, they've slaughtered hundreds or thousands of Autobots to the point where the Autobots know if they're dealing with a Phase Sixer, they're going to have to bring the whole army, and that they're going to lose a lot of Autobots. There's one where they literally killed thousands of Autobots in a single battle with a couple of Phase Sixers. They're about the same strength as Prime and Megatron, if we're going to be honest here. And it killed a lot of Decepticons in the process. It wasn't a process that was easily survivable. So the ones that we hear about a lot in the IDW universe are going to be Overlord, Six Shot. Six Shot can transform has 6 different transformations, and they basically consider him a one robot army. Optimus Prime put hands and feet on him, and that shocked the whole world because they thought Six Shot was the single most powerful transformer in existence at the time. And Black Shadow, we don't hear a lot about Black Shadow aside from the fact that he ended up getting killed, or getting shot and killed eventually by Overlord. So Phase Sixers are super dangerous. They're also really unpredictable, and so that's how Megatron ended up losing control of them, because they all had strong personalities, and the treatment they went through also altered their programming, and so they became super unpredictable. Overlord is probably the most exceptional the example of this one, because I think they finally just recently killed Overlord, and he was on a reign of terror, bro. The end of the program raised a lot of ethical concerns because the Decepticons do have internal ethics. It sounds weird, but they do. And there's very few of them left. And the notable ones I've already listed. They are the super soldiers of the Transformer universe. Now, there's also another layer to this, because not only is there the Phase Sixers, but within the Phase Sixers, there's an internal group of Decepticons that are responsible for tracking down the defectors and killing them. And they're called the Decepticon Justice Division. They are Phase Sixers who basically been retrofitted to be Megatron's punishment. Like, they go out, and if you defected or turned against the Decepticon, you're working against the Decepticons, if they see you as a traitor, they'll put you on the list. And once you're on the list, they'll hunt you across the universe to torture you and kill you. And that's what the Decepticon Justice Division is. And so they all have different names from what their original names are, but they're named after cities on Cybertron. So let's go. The first one is Tarn. He's the leader. There's Helix. I think it's Helix. There's Helix, Kaon, Treasurous. I'm struggling here. Voss, or they call him the Pet, and Nickel. And these are basically Megatron's private soldiers. And their role in the Transformers IDW universe was to punish defectors of the Decepticon cause or betrayers. And sometimes even Autobots landed on the list for swindling a Decepticon or whatever. The thing that made them so scary was they had the ability to be Phase Sixers and conquer planets like the other Phase Sixers, but they were specifically made to go out and capture and kill high profile targets for Megatron and enforce justice. And they went after the traitors to the cause. And as their name, they went after traitors of the cause. Their transformations were all like torture machines. One of them transformed into an electric chair. Another one transformed into a giant smelter. Another one transformed into a grinder. One of them had a voice that could make basically his targets' hearts explode, or their energon, their spark explode. Another one had a removable face that he had put on, and the removable face had all kinds of screws and drills and everything. It was really graphic and pretty awful. They were feared throughout the Decepticon world. The interesting thing was when Megatron landed on their list, because Megatron was their creator and their, they were enforcing Megatron's will. Well, when Megatron renounced being a Decepticon because he got tired of the fighting, basically, and he looked and really kind of had to come to Jesus about the level of casualties that he's inflicted across the universe, and basically became a pacifist for the most part. He landed on the Decepticon Justice Division list, and there's an entire arc where they're hunting down Megatron, and the way he finishes them off kind of establishes Megatron as the big dog of the Decepticons again, but he's an Autobot. So there's an entire arc, and there's a lot of explanation that goes into that one, and I'm not going to do that on this one. But it is a fascinating story about how Megatron becomes an Autobot. And it also shows exactly how much power Megatron is playing with. So anyway, the Decepticon Justice Division also enjoys their hunt. They enjoy killing the betrayers to the Decepticon cause. And so while Overlord is more like the Jason or Michael Myers, this is like an assemblage of like like if Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and Leatherface all decided to work together. That's kind of what the Decepticon Justice Division is. Really interesting book. And I'm condensing a lot. I got to be honest with you. I am actually taking a lot of concepts and really trying to shrink them down. Like we're talking about, it started in 2005 and I think it ended like in 2018. So we're talking like 13 some odd years of stories that I'm actually glossing over. And so the reason why I wanted to do it is because I'm trying to work on my chops so that I can actually start reviewing these for YouTube videos and stuff like that. Plus, it's a nerd thing. I think it might be some stuff that you guys might enjoy. So that's what I have. Thanks for tuning on the live stream. I'm not expecting a heck of a lot of traffic with this one, to be honest with you. This is just me kind of testing out the format out here. But if you like it, leave a like. If you got any feedback, let me know. I'm going to be working on, once I get things situated, I'll actually have a legitimate studio to do this in. And I won't be just a man with a fake backdrop working, and I'll be probably working more off of a script. So that's all I got. I just wanted to get this one in the chamber. Again, if you have any comic books you don't like, and drop them in there and elaborate. Tell me why you don't like them, why you ain't feeling this specific comic book or whatnot. Otherwise, I'm about to dip out. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.